Good evening, and thank you for coming tonight to the deliberative session of the 2022 Peterborough Town Meeting. How many of you are here for your first town meeting? Well, that's good. That's nice to have you. We haven't had one in quite a while, but we usually start with our Pledge of Allegiance, and the only thing wrong with that is that we don't have a flag. So we're a little rusty here, but Nicole has... I think she's got one for you. There we go. All right, so if you'll stand, please, let's start with our Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. That's always a good way to get started. My name is Phil Runyon. I'm your moderator, and I'll try to be as moderate as possible tonight. Won't do anything that would make you want to come up here and slap me. All right, so we're probably all a little bit rusty here tonight. Let's go over the rules that we'll be following. We'll use these same rules on each of the articles that we're going to take up tonight. First of all, please direct your comments and questions to the chair rather than among yourselves. If you want to talk to someone else, please step outside so you can do that. We need to have a motion before us in order for there to be any debate at all. So that will require a motion being made and then seconded by someone else, and then we'll start the process on that. Everyone will be entitled to speak tonight who's registered. When you want to speak, please just line up behind the microphone in the center there, and we'll take you in the order that you come forward. When you speak, please start by stating your name. And what we'll do is give everyone a chance to speak first before we allow anyone to speak again. And this is the process that we'll follow on each of our articles. I'll read the article first, then I'll ask for a motion under that article. Then we'll ask for a second to the motion by, again, someone else who hasn't made the motion. Then we'll give the person who has made the motion the opportunity to speak first, and then we'll open the floor to comments or questions from the audience. The only thing we might be voting on here tonight will be proposed amendments. If you have an amendment that you want to offer, we have forms here for you to write it down on. They do need to be in writing. You need to sign your name. We'll take up the amendments, the proposed amendments, one at a time, and debate and act on them before taking up another amendment. So there won't be any amendments on amendments. We'll finish debating one amendment and take action on it before moving on. If an amendment fails, we'll go back to the original motion that's been made. If an amendment passes, the motion will be amended in that manner, and when we're finished debating and acting on a motion, whether it be the original motion or an amended motion, we'll move it to the official ballot for voting in May. Okay, there is a procedure called calling the question. It's a motion to cut off debate. I'm not going to entertain a motion like that if there's still people who haven't spoken the first time. So we'll give everybody a chance to speak before there's a motion recognized to cut off debate. But a motion to call the question is just that. In other words, to move immediately to the to ending debate. It's a non-debatable motion. It does require a second, and it requires a 2/3 vote. So that's something that we'll have to determine if the time comes. But if it passes, that will stop the debate on that motion. We'll move the motion that's been made in whatever status it is at that point onto the official ballot and move on to the next article. Articles won't be reconsidered after they're acted upon and moved to the official ballot. Some people may be here to debate a specific article, and then they need to leave after that. It's unfair to then come back to one that's already been debated. So we'll act on an article, say your piece, we'll move on to the next article, and we won't be taking up those articles that have been passed again. Okay, our civility protocol is one that I always refer to as the Walter Peterson protocol. He was our moderator for many years here. Civility was Walter's middle name, and we will be counting on everyone to debate on the issues, not making any personal references. It's never been a problem in this town meeting in the past, and I'm sure it won't be tonight. And before we get started, I want to make a comment about one person whom we lost last week. Ed Hinault was always here sitting among you many times over at the Budget Committee table. He was a great friend to many of us. He was a tremendous contributor to the culture of our community and our town. He was also a founder and chair of the Open Space Committee, and we're going to miss him on many different levels. So, along with many of the others, frankly, whom we've lost since the last time we got together. All right, so let's get started. Are there any questions about how we'll proceed here? If not, I'd like to introduce Tyler Ward, who's going to offer some welcoming remarks and give you a little bit more information about the process that we'll be following tonight.
Thank you, Moderator Runyon. Nice words about Ed Hinault. I had the pleasure of working with him for a few years on Budget Committee and Open Space, and certainly a loss. Can we take a moment, actually, of silence for, as Phil mentioned, the people we have lost since we last met, just briefly. Thank you. Tonight we'll discuss 10 articles. Before we even start, I'm Tyler Ward. With me up at the table here are fellow Select Board members Bill Taylor, Bill Kennedy. We have Town Administrator Nicole McStay. Over at the Budget Committee table we have Don Parkhurst, Carl Mabzino, Ronnie McIntyre, Andy Sliver, Rick Lesser, and Al Linus. I want to thank their work over the process of our budget season, along with all our department heads in the House tonight. I won't name them all. They know who they are, and there's a good chance they may stand up to speak. We also have Attorney Radigan here to guide us in any need if we have it. So tonight we'll discuss the 10 articles. We'll consider any amendments that may be presented. When discussion is ended, the article at the end of the evening or after the discussion will be moved to the ballot. And then after this meeting tonight, we won't meet again until our ballot session on May 10th, and the polls will be open from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., and that will happen at the community center as in the past. I'd also like to thank our supervisors of the checklist, Carol Lennox, Denise Sweet, and Karen Bannister over there. They do work tirelessly to get us all on the right page with our voting status. I say Carol Lennox.
No, it's Karen.
Karen Bass, Carol Lennox, and Denise Sweet. Sorry. Oh. Kathy Sullivan. I'm sorry. Okay. That's Bill's. Next. We have Linda Guyette, our town clerk, over here too. Sorry, I'm rusty. It's been a couple of years. All right. I did give my name right. Okay. First off, we'll discuss Article 3, which will be the budget for fiscal year 2023, and that runs from July 1st, 2022 through June 30th, 2023. Next up would be Article 4, that's the pay-as-you-throw special revenue fund. Article 5 will be our capital reserve and expendable trust funds. Article 6 will involve the roadway systems upgrades capital reserve fund. And then Article 7 will have a transfer from the cemetery fund. Article 8 will be a discussion on the municipal facilities campus expendable trust fund. Article 9, the sewer capital reserve fund. Article 10 will be the discontinuance of a fund, and we'll have to decide on how we're going to spend the sum coming back. Article 11, we'll have a discussion about our community power plan. And then Article 12, an Economic Development Authority support petition article that will be presented by the petitioners, I believe. After ballot session on Tuesday, May 10th, we'll have our open session of town meeting on Wednesday, May 11th at 7 p.m. here in the townhouse, the very same location. There we'll discuss and vote on, in person, Article 13, only if the budget does not pass during the ballot session. Article 14 will be the discussion around a bond for the municipal campus and fire and ambulance facility. And Article 15 will be an ambulance service revolving fund. I think I got through it.
All right, well, thanks, Tyler. And in case you're wondering what happened to Article 1 and 2, Article 1 is our town elections. Those are always on the official ballot. And Article 2 are proposed zoning amendments. So those will also be on the official ballot. So let's go to Article 3. And under Article 3, it's been warned to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $13,691,283 for the support of general municipal water and wastewater operations. This represents the fiscal year 2023 budget period, July 1, 2022 to June 30, 2023. This article does not include appropriations in special or individual articles addressed separately. And as you can see, what the recommendations are by the Select Board and the Budget Committee. Is there a motion under Article 3?
I would make a motion to move that to ballot.
All right, and who would like to speak toward the budget?
I will briefly mention again that our Budget Committee and department heads worked diligently for several months leading up to this. This year we actually had a new twist on it where we had a Budget Committee paired up with a department head, so they had firsthand knowledge of how that department head went through the budgets, and it worked quite well. And I'm impressed with how our department heads really were conscious of where our budget had to be, and we're looking at mostly flat within dollars of previous year. At this point, I think I'll hand it over to Nicole for a more in-depth presentation.
Thanks, everyone. Can you hear me? Good. All right. So this year, as we went into the budget process, there were a few changes that we made to how the budget was being presented. Salaries, cost of living adjustment, and merit were moved into each of the employees' primary departments unless they are split across multiple funds. Revolving and special revenue funds, which are supported by user fees, those include the Recreation Revolving Fund and the Ambulance Revolving Fund, were presented with the entire budget, but will not be included in Article 3 as they have been done in years past. The enterprise funds, water and sewer, are still part of warrant Article 3. And capital reserve funds and expendable trust funds will no longer be included as offsetting revenues or budgeted along with the budget expenditures. So what does that mean? This is how this really looks. If you want to compare a prior year's budget to the current year budget that we're presenting now, you need to add all of those different budgets back in. So at the top line, you see what is our operating budget. Then following that, the Recreation Revolving Fund, the Ambulance Revolving Fund, the PEG Station Revolving Fund, and the Pay-As-You-Throw Special Revenue Fund. If you add all those together, you can really get a good apples-to-apples comparison. It's important to note, though, that these funds receive the same scrutiny from the Budget Committee and the Select Board as the general fund through the annual budget process. And there are a few budget-wide impacts to take into account this year. Our health insurance went up 2.8%, or will be going up 2.8%. From the New Hampshire retirement system, we don't have an increase for fiscal year 23, though we do expect one for fiscal year 24. They typically do their adjustments every other year. We based our budget projections on the Northeast Consumer Price Index from October 2021, which at that time was 5.4%. I know that seems like halcyon days at this point. The merit and COLA was based off of that, and we set those at 4.6%, and those were included in all the budgets. We are no longer budgeting for veterans credits, blind, and elderly exemptions. That's going to be accounted for during the tax rate setting process. It's something that's incredibly difficult to try to estimate in advance, so it really works much better to do it the way it's supposed to be done. And also electricity costs are expected to go up dramatically. We're budgeting an increase of 30%. All right, so let me go through just some of the highlights of each of these budgets. In administration, the assessing database will be getting upgraded. We expect that to cost about $50,000. In the planning and building department, we received a MAST grant. I can't remember what the acronym stands for, but essentially it's the Transportation Alternatives. We're looking to do some improvements to the downtown, pedestrian and bike paths and whatnot, and there's $30,000 of visioning and engineering. We've budgeted the expenses that will be offsetting with that grant. In the town clerk's budget, you'll see an increase due to the 3 elections in fiscal year 23, which, don't forget, begins on July 1 of 2022 and runs through June 30th of 2023. IT and GIS, we have security-related software licensing, which will cost approximately $75,000. In the finance department, we removed the credits and exemptions from the budget. That was $216,000. And we refinanced a number of bonds, including an early payoff of the West Peterborough TIF bond, which is why there's a dramatic drop-off there. Recreation department salaries are now being properly distributed between the general fund and the recreation revolving fund, and we've eliminated the transfer from the general fund to the rec revolving fund. In library, there's lots of unknowns in terms of the operating costs of this new building. Fiscal year 23 is going to be our benchmark year. In the police department, we've eliminated the licensing cost of software that's no longer needed to capture cell phone data. We completed an upgrade of the in-house video system, and, well, unsurprisingly, vehicle parts have gone up in cost, and special details are down, as is the offsetting revenue goes along with that. And in fire and emergency management, the $50,000 transfer to the ambulance service was removed from the budget. That's going to be a separate warrant article that we're going to discuss at open session in May. In public works, this is a summary of a very busy department. The downtown tree maintenance program is being supported by the downtown TIF district. Contracted services there's also an increase to contracted services for mowing of the downtown parks. The West Peterborough TIF highway maintenance is up, but so is the offsetting revenue. We have one last project to complete in the West Peterborough TIF to extend the sidewalk and some drainage infrastructure out to the condos closest to Route 101. There's $28,000 to purchase a glass crusher, which is offset entirely by the Reclamation Trust Fund. And post-closure landfill monitoring costs vary from year to year. This year was one of the more expensive years. And lastly, there's $100,000 in engineering expenses for the South Peterborough TIF district. That is 100% offset by the TIF district funds. And in water and sewer, the water salary line has increased due to Rodney Bartlett's work on the Coldstone Springs project for us. And water and sewer debt service was refinanced with a significant drop in those costs. In total, the gross expenditure, which is the amount you will see on the town meeting warrant, is $13,691,283. I had to add an X or zero in just to find a digit past the decimal point. That is how flat this budget is. I cannot but applaud the department directors who worked so hard to bring in an incredibly responsible budget, and also Lily Gilligan, our brand new finance director, and all of her staff in the finance department did an amazing job this year. Okay.
Thank you, Nicole.
All right, lots of figures, lots of information there. Any questions or comments? Really? Going once, going twice. Okay, well, thank you. We'll move the budget article then to the official ballot for voting on May 10th, and we'll move on to Article 4. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $112,000 for the purpose of operating and maintaining the town's pay-as-you-throw program, with said funds to come from pay-as-you-throw special revenue fund and no additional funds to be raised through taxation. And again, you can see the recommendations that the Select Board and Budget Committee are making about this article. Is there a motion under Article 4?
So moved.
All right, a second?
I'll second.
All right, so who would like to speak toward this motion? Nicole?
So unlike other fund types, special revenue funds must have their proposed expenditures approved of by vote at town meeting. The pay-as-you-throw fund is supported entirely by the sale of the blue bags needed to dispose of household trash at the recycling center. The fees that we collect then pay the hauling charges and other expenses related to the disposal of household trash.
Questions? Comments? Good title. All right. If there are no questions or comments, we will also move Article 4 to the official ballot for voting on May 10th. Article 5, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $353,100 to be placed in the following previously established capital reserve and expendable trust funds. $15,000 to be placed in the GIS Capital Reserve Fund, $18,100 to be placed in the Police Department Fleet Management Capital Reserve Fund, $100,000 in the Fire Department Apparatus and Equipment Capital Reserve Fund, $5,000 to be placed in the Winter Operations Expendable Trust Fund, $150,000 to be placed in the Fleet Management Capital Reserve Fund, and $65,000 to be placed in the Recreation Department Equipment Capital Reserve Fund. Again, you can see the recommendations there by the Select Board and the Budget Committee. Is there a motion under Article 5?
So moved.
All right, moved and seconded. Moved
Second.
by Mr. Kennedy and seconded by Tyler Ward. Who would like to speak on this one? Nicole, thank you.
All right, right, this is a request to fund capital reserve and expendable trust funds. This is the last step in the town's annual capital improvement planning process. Each year, the Capital Improvement Plan Committee meets with the department directors to discuss the capital needs of their programs. These include planning for the replacement of vehicles and improvements to systems and programs. The CIP committee then revises and presents the plan to the Budget Committee and the Select Board. At the end of the budgeting process, the Budget Committee and the Select Board review the requests and vote to recommend them to the voters. Once the funds have been raised by town meeting, they are turned over to the trustees of the trust fund for management until such time as the Select Board approves the expenditures as outlined in the capital improvements plan.
All right. Again, any questions or comments on this motion? Is my microphone on? All right. Yes, ma'am. Would you step right up to the microphone here, please? And just state your name if you would, please. Yeah, maybe.
Sandy Bedas, can you hear me now? Sandy Bedas?
There we go. Thank you.
All right, I just had a question about the $150,000 in the fleet management capital reserve. What fleet is that?
That is specifically for our public works fleet. So those are the highway trucks and the vehicles that we use for buildings and grounds, other maintenance activities.
Okay, other questions, comments? If not, we will move Article 5 to the ballot voting on May 10th. Under Article 6, it was warranted to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $400,000 to be placed in the previously established roadway system upgrades capital reserve fund. And again, you'll see the recommendations here by the Select Board and the Budget Committee. Is there a motion under Article 6?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Okay. And who would like to speak on this one?
At this point, I don't know if you're like me and drive a 21-year-old truck, but I feel every bump in every road in town. And right now, Seth McLean, Assistant Town Administrator and Department of Public Works Director, is going to explain what we're doing about that.
Thank you, Tyler. If that doesn't get a question, I don't know what else will tonight, right?
Welcome.
As Tyler said, my name is Seth McLean, I'm the Public Works Director, and here filling the very big shoes of Rodney Bartlett, which many of you knew for many years. We worked together establishing this program in concert with the Budget Committee and Select Boards past. What we're doing here is considering our payment management program, and this is the 5th year of this program. So we started this actually 6 years ago with an engineering study to understand, to Tyler's sort of question he was getting to, which is, what is the value of our road network and what is it going to take to upgrade it and keep it in good shape? So that's what we're talking about here. So I hope you bear with me. I'm going to go through a little spiel that many people, especially the Budget Committee, have heard many, many times. But for those of you who aren't familiar with the program, it could be helpful to you. So what we're talking about, if you look at the screen, is there's two bits of money, actually. Our operating budget, year over year, for at least 15 years now, is funded at $450,000 a year. And that gives our department the money that it needs to maintain our roadway network, but not upgrade our roadway network. What we're discussing tonight and voting on, hopefully in May, is $400,000 on a 10-year program, $400,000 a year. Again, this is the 5th year of this funding request. Each year had gone through prior. Now, I'd like to point out early that there is actually probably a little bit north of $260,000 currently sitting in that fund now, because one of the objectives of the end of this program is to save for paving in the downtown. It's going to be very costly, and we wanted to make sure we get a jump start on that, so we're not coming back to you at the end of the 10-year program and asking for more bonded money. So we're trying to spend somewhere in the neighborhood of 70% of these funds every year and leave some money in the bank, essentially. So this is the practice of planning for pavement maintenance and rehabilitation with the goal of maximizing the value and life of our pavement network. So we're trying to make the right repair at the right time, but in order to do that, we learned 6 years ago that we didn't actually have enough money to keep our road network in good shape, but also upgrade the roads that were dilapidated. And many people in the room who live on rural roads know some of those roads are in very, very bad shape. They've been neglected over 20 years' time. So I usually throw this graphic up to give you an illustration of what we're talking about. And if you look at the large curve that goes from the word excellent down to very, very poor, that's traditional old way of doing pavement management, where you pave a road and over 20 years' time that road just degrades, and then municipality comes back to you and says, I need $1 million, let's upgrade the road. Well, we're trying not to do that anymore. We don't think that's a particularly practical or responsible way to manage 71 miles of roads in town, which have a value north of $70 million. And so if you look towards the top right of that, you'll see this little repeating sort of trend where it says spending $1 on preservation here. And what that's showing you is we're essentially resetting the degradation curve on roadways. Okay? So rather than letting them drop off completely and cost a lot of money, like reconstruction at $45 a square yard, in fact that number is probably 30% north of that now since COVID. What we're trying to do is get all of our road network into the preventative maintenance and the routine maintenance areas, so that we've repaved the roads, we're taking good care of them, and we're doing it for a very small fraction of the cost. As I said, when we started this program, it was actually it was fall of 2017. The Budget Committee, Select Board, and Town Administrator at the time challenged myself, some of our interns, to put together a program whereby we could answer the question, is the $450,000 in our operating budget enough to actually improve our roadway network? Is it enough to keep our roadway network in the shape it's in, or do we need to capitalize more money in order to get the roads brought up to snuff? We've been hearing tremendous complaints 7, 8 years ago about the quality of the network, and yes, I know there are some issues right now because it is spring, but we'll get to those, I promise you. And so we needed to understand that. The question was, how much money is enough money to both upgrade the roadway network but also keep it in good shape going forward, so we're not coming back to you asking for $2 million to rebuild Union Street again. So we hired an engineering firm out of Manchester, and they took us through a training program so that we would learn how to do what's called a road surface rating. They took us mile by mile and taught us how to basically come up with the numbers you're seeing on the screen here. So what we wanted to be able to do was have a metric we could go to our community with, whereby we could say a completely dilapidated road, very poor condition, failed road is a 0, and a brand new paved road is 100. Make it easy for everybody to understand. When we finished our initial drill, learning how to do a road surface rating network, we came up with a 70.45 as our starting point. As you can see over the years, since the funding of this program, we've actually been able to increase the network rating up to a 77.06. And that doesn't include some of the work we're going to get done this spring and into next year. So the program has had incredible benefits to the town, and I won't read all these off to you, but just to show you some of the work that this program has funded, especially in the blue box. Those are roads that we would have never been able to pave, or we could maybe do 20% of those, but we would have to skip on the maintenance of taking care of the roads that are actually already in good shape. So that was the 2018 season. As you can see, the list is quite comprehensive. Again, we're about halfway through this program, and our aim is to continue this program through 10 years, including the inclusion of the downtown. And that's essentially it. I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have. Yes, ma'am.
Joanne Carr. I just have a question. I have 2 questions, actually, and first a statement. The road management paving plan is quite sensible. I totally support that. But I have a question about the Public Works budget, which is a 19% increase of about $440,000. So if you could explain that. So that's the first question. And the second question is, if we approve the new expendable trust fund for the municipal facilities, we fund our trust funds at $353,000, and we do this project at $400,000. We're actually increasing our budget by about another $1 million. So I'm curious if all of these, well, I'm just adding up 350. Well, we're not, so that's what I'm asking, is what is the tax impact to these, that's about of $1 million increase?
Sure.
Thanks.
I'll handle your first question, and then I'll pass it to Nicole. Your question was in regards to the increase year over year on the Public Works budget. That increase actually included, if you're just looking at the summary page, the 2 TIF projects that Nicole mentioned, $100,000 in South Peterborough for engineering of pedestrian improvements and $350,000 for a previously approved project, which both are completely fully offset. So the Public Works budget is actually flat year over year when you consider those revenues. Nicole, do you want-
And as to the expendable trust fund, that is completely offset by ARPA money, which is America Recovery Plan Act. Those are federal funds that we received due to revenue losses in the ambulance service. But because those funds are they can only be used in very specific ways, specifically for infrastructure upgrades, broadband. There was one other large category. Cybersecurity, that they could be put towards. When the selectmen were considering the use of those funds, it made the most sense, and we thought that the best benefit from that would be to put it towards infrastructure, particularly the fire and ambulance facility, since that was not only a critical need that we're facing, that we'll discuss in great detail in May, I'm sure, but it's also something that will help us be prepared for any kind of health emergency, pandemic-related emergency, which is really what a lot of those funds were directed at. Does that answer your question, Joanne?
So no impact to the tax rate for all of these 3 accounts?
For those amounts, no. There's no impact. Those are completely offset. The capital reserve funds, the ones that were in that list one by one, those do have a taxpayer impact. I don't remember if there was another article that you were calling out in particular.
Well, 6, 5, and 8. You addressed 8 and... Tax impact of 5.
Joanne, I don't think we can hear you. Are you asking an additional question?
No,
Or?
well, I'm sorry. Nicole had asked me clarification on which articles I was questioning, which was 5.
5 is the capital reserve expendable trust funds. 6, Article 5 is our taxpayer funds. Article 6, the roadway system upgrade capital reserve fund, also taxpayer funds. And Article 8, that's the federal funds. And then the increase to the highway, those particular projects, those are completely offset by TIF district funds, which are tax dollars, but they're tax dollars that are segregated for that particular purpose. If everything passes on the ballot as it's been presented, everything passes at town meeting as it's been presented, the increase to the tax rate will be 58 cents.
Okay. Other questions, comments? All right, seeing none, we will move Article 6 to the official ballot for voting on May 10th. And we'll move on to Article 7 to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $3,000 to be added to the previously established Cemetery Expendable Trust Fund, and further to transfer said amount from the Cemetery Trustees checking account to the Cemetery Expendable Trust Fund. This amount is funded 100% by the sale of deeds for burial lots. And again, you'll see the recommendations there. Is there a motion under Article 7?
So moved.
So moved, and
And I'll second.
all right. And who would like to speak on this?
I'm not sure there's much more to say. This will not affect your taxes.
Questions, comments on this one? All right, if not, we'll move Article 7 to the official ballot. And under Article 8, we'll C, if the town will authorize the establishment of an expendable trust fund pursuant to RSA 31:19A to be known as the Municipal Facilities Campus Expendable Trust Fund for the purpose of retaining funds for the designing, engineering, and construction of a municipal facilities campus off of Elm Street, and to designate the Board of Selectmen as agents to expend, and further, to raise and appropriate the sum of $350,082 from fund balance to be placed in this new Municipal Facilities Campus Expendable Trust Fund per the acceptance of unanticipated monies pursuant to RSA 31:95B of local fiscal recovery funds from the state of New Hampshire under the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021, accepted by the Selectmen on August 3, 2021, to be used for this purpose. No money to be raised through taxation. And again, you'll see the recommendations by the Select Board and the Budget Committee. Is there a motion under Article 8?
So moved.
All right, moved and
Can I get the second again?
second. Who will speak to this article? Nicole?
I've already more or less summarized this, but just one more time. In March of 2021, we learned that Peterborough would be receiving $701,000 in proceeds from the State and Local Fiscal Recovery Fund, which was created by the American Rescue Plan Act. The first half of the funds were accepted by the Select Board after a public hearing on August 3rd. But to ensure that they are used in compliance with the U.S. Treasury Department's guidelines, the Select Board decided to put those funds towards the fire and ambulance facility and municipal campus project. To make sure that those funds remain available as the project moves forward, we are asking the voters to create an expendable trust fund dedicated to that purpose. And as a reminder, we will not be discussing the project itself tonight. That topic will be taken up at open session on May 11th when we consider Article 14.
All right, I'm glad I don't have to explain that one. Any questions or comments? Oh, yes, sir. Would you just step up, please? Yes, sir.
Yes, good evening. I'm Rob Stevenson. I have two questions about this. One, at a previous town meeting, has it been approved that the municipal campus will be at this location? And now we're talking about money to do engineering and architecture and so forth, or is it, or has that not been decided? And secondly, if this is approved, sometime in the future, will there be public hearings on this project? There's nothing mentioned in the article about this, so just wondering whether that will naturally come about.
Can you answer that one, Nicole?
Yes, absolutely. At the 2019 town meeting, and this is a fast forwarding through an awful lot of work that had already been done through various committees that have been impaneled, municipal facilities studies. We've had 2 or 3 now sets of engineers look at this project. In 2019, it came to town meeting when the town wanted to reconstruct the Public Works facility. The Public Works facility is at the same campus off of Elm Street. And the Select Board and the Budget Committee wanted to do that on Elm Street without moving the Public Works facility, but only if the fire station, fire and ambulance facility could be co-located on the same site. Essentially, if you can keep all those things on that same piece of land, that was the preferred way of moving forward. After a quick study, it was determined that yes, there would be enough room to build the fire and ambulance facility at that location, so we moved forward with that project in 2019. In 2020, the voters voted again to raise and appropriate $200,000 to go towards the first phase of conceptual design for the fire and ambulance facility. That work has been completed. And then Article 14 on this year's town meeting, open session town meeting, will be to discuss bonding up to $2 million to continue that work through the design engineering process all the way that would carry us through to the end of the project. Not the construction funds, though. Construction funds will have to be voted on at town meeting at a later date. There's been a number of public meetings up to this point. If you go to our website, there's a link to peterboroughprojects.info, which summarizes a lot of that work. We have records on that website that go all the way back to 2004, but the Municipal Facilities Task Force is the most recent group to work on that project. Their meetings were also public, but yeah, understandably, a lot of people didn't necessarily want to attend them because of COVID, but the next phases will certainly have their fair share of public process as well, with engagement from the public, getting some input, looking into various design options.
But have the voters in the past approved that a new fire station will be built at that location? Now we're going forward and doing the engineering, the architecture, or is that still up in the air? Has it been approved?
It has been approved through the wording of the warrant articles in the discussion up to the 2019 warrant article for the Public Works facility. It was presented that way at town meeting, but also the wording of the 2020 vote included the location off of Elm Street. You're welcome.
All right, other questions or comments? And if you have difficulty getting up here, and we'd be glad to bring the microphone to you. All right, well, if not, we will move this article to the official ballot for voting on May 10th. Article 9, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $75,000 to be placed in the following previously established sewer capital reserve fund. This amount is funded 100% funded by sewer fees. And again, you'll see the recommendations there. Is there a motion under Article 9?
So moved.
Second?
I'll second.
All right, and who would like to speak on this one? Nicole again?
This is very straightforward. This article seeks to support the Utility Division's capital reserve plan. Because it is funded through the sewer user fees and not tax funds, it's being considered separately from other capital reserve funds and expendable trust funds.
Questions here? All right, we will move Article 9 to the official ballot for voting on May 10th. Article 10, to see if the town will vote to discontinue the following capital reserve fund, with said funds accumulated interest to date of withdrawal to be transferred to the municipality's general fund. Fire Department Fleet Management Capital Reserve Fund, date of establishment 5/13/2014, with an approximate balance of $31.25. So how about a motion here?
This is one of the motions that I really shine on, and I move that we put Article 10 on the ballot.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
All right. So, Bill, would you like to speak on this one?
I would not.
Someone's got to ask a question. All right, well, thank you. We will move this one to the official ballot then as well. Article 11, to see if the town will vote to adopt the Peterborough Community Power Plan pursuant to RSA 53-E:7, which authorizes the Select Board to develop and implement Peterborough Community Power as described therein. Under the Community Power Plan, the town is authorized to buy electricity in bulk for its residents and businesses. The plan's goal is to help ratepayers save money on their electric bills while also getting more energy from renewable sources. The plan will be self-funding with no amount to be raised from taxation. Each ratepayer will be able to choose from among 4 optional rate tiers with varying percentages of renewable energy and rates, or they may opt out of the plan if desired. And again, you'll see the recommendation here by the Select Board. Is there a motion under Article 11?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
All right. Who would like to speak on this one?
I would like to start by commending the Peterborough Community Power Task Force. They've done a fabulous job. Their quick and thorough development of a plan over the course of, what is it, 9 months, Joel, is incredible. Worked very hard at it. It's a comprehensive plan, and it's available on the town website if you care to read it. I don't know how many pages it is. It's something around 35 or 40 pages, but we've all read it twice, at least. But in any case, I understand that Tony Cassidy has a presentation he would like to give in this regard. Thank you, Tony.
Thank you, Bill. Last September, the Select Board created the Peterborough Community Power Task Force as an official town committee. Since then, the task force has written a community power plan for Peterborough, and the adoption of that plan is what is being proposed as Article 11. As was said in the text there, the plan will be self-funding with no amount to be raised from taxation, and it creates no financial liability for the town. I'd like to give a short presentation, which a few of you, I think, have seen, but for the benefit of everyone else, we'll run through it. It provides an overview of what community power is and how it works. It also covers the primary benefits of that community power will offer to Peterborough, along with the various options that are provided in the Peterborough Community Power Plan. Then the steps that remain in order to launch community power in Peterborough are outlined. Community power, in short, is a way for towns to help ratepayers save money on their electric bills while also getting more energy from renewable sources. Our state legislature passed a law, RSA 53E, that allows local governments to pool the total energy needs of all their residents and small businesses to make bulk purchases of electricity at wholesale prices. This is not a totally new concept. It's a lot like how the town of Peterborough has aggregated the energy supply for its municipal buildings for several years. Since 2013, under that program, the town has averaged a savings of approximately 2 cents per kilowatt hour and has increased its percent from renewable resources on average to 70%, which is over 3.5 times that of the Eversource default during the same period. The Conval School District is also buying the electricity supply for its buildings in the same way. Under the Community Power Plan, the town will work in collaboration with an experienced service provider who knows the electricity market, so town staff don't need expertise in the energy sector and won't be tied up with operation and administration of the program. With community power, the town won't own or maintain the poles and wires. Repairs, power outages, and routine upgrades will still be taken care of by the utility, Eversource. With community power, the town of Peterborough will pool the town's total energy demand and make a bulk purchase of electricity for residents and small businesses. Eversource is the utility that delivers electricity to customers in Peterborough. Eversource also buys the electricity that they deliver to customers who are on their default plan. With the Community Power Plan, Eversource would still deliver to all the electricity to all Peterborough customers, but the town, not Eversource, will buy the electricity in bulk for residents and small businesses. There will be no change in billing or payments. All billing will continue to be done monthly by Eversource, and customers' payments will still be made to them. The charges on your Eversource electric bill are broken into 2 parts. The top portion is for supplier charges. This is the portion that will change under the Community Power Plan as your supplier will become Peterborough Community Power. The bottom portion of the charges is for delivery. This is what Eversource charges you for delivering your electricity using their poles and wires. This portion will not change under the Community Power Plan since Eversource continues to deliver your electricity. Under the Peterborough Community Power Plan, any homes and businesses with on-site renewable energy sources such as solar panels may continue to sell their excess electricity back to the grid through net metering. Income-eligible households who qualify for discounts on their electric bills under the Electric Assistance Program and are enrolled in such will continue to receive their discounts under the plan. Community Power can offer several benefits to Peterborough. They include: 1, savings. Community Power may help Peterborough's ratepayers save money. The Community Power Plan allows the town to choose when it buys energy, so that, along with buying in bulk, could potentially allow Peterborough to buy energy at a lower rate than Eversource's default rate. Lower electricity rates mean lower electricity bills. Secondly, with more local choice, Peterborough will have more control over its energy mix, where it comes from, and how rates are set. Third, Community Power supports Peterborough's energy goals. Because the Community Power Plan will give Peterborough control of its energy portfolio, Peterborough could choose to buy more energy from renewable sources like solar, wind, and hydro. This can help Peterborough meet its goal of transitioning to 100% renewable sources of electricity by 2030, which is as per last year's town meeting vote, which passed overwhelmingly. Fourth, Community Power also promotes equity. Community Power allows residents of all income levels and housing types to enjoy the benefits of renewable energy. You don't have to have solar panels on your home. You just need to pay your electric bill. And fifth, the Community Power Plan can establish a reserve fund to be used down the road to finance a variety of locally determined projects. Some examples of these could include local renewable energy development, energy-efficient renovations for low and moderate income homes, and batteries for energy storage. Community Power will be completely optional. All Peterborough residents and businesses who currently receive Eversource's default energy supply will be automatically enrolled in the Community Power Plan. They will receive a notification from the town in the mail letting them know about this change. Anyone who prefers not to participate may opt out and remain on the Eversource default supply rate. Ratepayers who are not on Eversource's default supply rate, but who have previously chosen a third-party energy supplier, will also be notified and may opt into the program whenever they like. The Peterborough Community Power Plan will offer 4 rate tiers. Each tier will have a different percentage of renewable energy along with a different cost. The default tier with automatic enrollment will have a rate equal to or lower than the then current Eversource default rate, along with a slightly higher percentage of renewable energy sources. There will be one opt-down tier with an even lower rate, but with less renewable energy than the default tier. There will also be 2 opt-up tiers, one with roughly 50% renewable energy sources and another with 100% renewable energy, each with its own rate. All Peterborough ratepayers will be placed on the default tier unless they either opt out of the plan or choose one of the optional tiers. Anyone may choose to change tiers or opt out of the plan entirely at any time without incurring any fee or penalty for doing so. The remaining steps for launching Community Power in Peterborough are: the Community Power Plan will be voted on as Article 11 at town meeting. Once approved by voters, the plan will be submitted for approval by the Public Utilities Commission. The town will then sign a Community Power contract with the service provider. Then, once the plan is approved by the PUC, the town will notify residents and small businesses, providing details of the plan's implementation, available rates, and their enrollment options. Then finally, the program will be launched utilizing the service provider. That concludes the presentation, and now I'd like to invite our task force co-chair, Joel Huberman, to join me up here, and we'll open the floor for questions.
I'd like to remind everyone that a number of communities around New Hampshire have already adopted their own plans. I know of no one that's been rejected. The most recent was Wilton. I'm sure you read about that in the Monadnock Ledger.
Joel, do you want to speak, Joel?
Well, I might just add to Bill's comment that although there are quite a few other communities that have adopted plans, there are not yet any plans that have gone into effect, because all the approved plans, as well as the plan that I hope will approve, will have to wait a while for the Public Utilities Commission to finalize its detailed rules for the implementation of these plans. It's hard to say how long that will take, but probably closer to fall of this year.
All right. Any questions about this one? Yes.
Hi, I'm Corinne Chronopoulos. I was wondering if you could explain more about the governance. You mentioned the PUC. I don't have my mind around who is in charge of the task force. And my other question was, you mentioned that a reserve fund could be created and then projects could be put in place. Who decides what those projects are?
I'll try to answer your excellent questions, and if I get it wrong, Tony will correct me. The governance. The responsible body ultimately will be the select board of the town of Peterborough. The Peterborough Community Power Task Force, which currently consists of 7 members plus an alternate member, all listed by name on the town website, will continue as an advisory body. We will also be getting advice from whichever company is selected to be our service provider. There are currently 3 contenders for that position. We have not yet, the Community Power Task Force has not yet made up its mind with regard to which of those 3 contenders to recommend to the select board, but it is the select board that will ultimately make the choice of service provider. The service provider is also expected to participate in guidance of this program. So it'll be basically a 3-way part: select board, Community Power Task Force, and service provider. Does that answer your question? Part 1. If there are further aspects of the question, please let us know.
I think the question was about what to do with the reserve fund proceeds.
Yeah, as Tony mentioned in his presentation, the reserve fund could be used for a variety of purposes. We don't yet have a reserve fund, so the issue of what to do with it is pretty far in the future. But again, the governance will be the same. It will be a partnership between the select board, the service provider, and the task force to make those decisions.
And they will ultimately fall on the select board for final approval.
All right. Go ahead. Yes.
Hello, my name is Beth Jandernoa, and my question is, assuming that the Public Utilities Commission did approve in the fall, what would be your guess about how long it would take for us to adopt this? Do you have some estimate? Is it a year? We're looking at 2 years? What do you think?
I think that once the PUC has approved the plan, steps will be taken immediately to begin to put it into operation. The first thing will be to explore the electricity rates that are available on the wholesale market at that time and come up with a detailed list of rates for the default option and for the opt-down and two opt-up options, so that we can present those to the residents of the town at the time when we ask them to make a decision between going on the one of the tiers of the Peterborough Community Power Plan or opting out and staying with Eversource default.
Thank you.
Other questions? All right, gentlemen, thank you. We'll move this article to the official ballot for voting on May 10th. And we'll move on to Article 12. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate $31,000 for the purpose of a contractual service to support the Economic Development Authority in their efforts to promote business retention and new business development. And you'll see the recommendations there by the Select Board and the Budget Committee. Is there a motion under this article?
Mr. Chair, this is Jean Deach, and I have a point of information.
Pardon me?
Point of information, please.
Okay, go ahead.
I spoke with Attorney Radigan before the meeting and asked him if it were possible to move a petition article from the written ballot to the town meeting, and he told me that...
To the open town meeting?
Yes. And he told me that, yes, indeed, that is possible for the Select Board to do at this meeting, but not for the general body. So I would like to know, we would like to give information about the petition article and why we think it should be moved, but I don't really know the procedure for that.
Okay, well, is there a motion to make under the article, or is this still just a general question that you're asking?
So, should I make a motion to not submit the article to... So, when we say submit to the ballot, does that mean the printed ballot? Or...
Yes. It means
okay,
the
so
ballot.
then our motion should be to not submit it to the printed ballot in order to get it to select...
Well, I think in order for you to do what you sound like you want to do there, it might take an amendment to the article. And but I think in order for an amendment to be made, there needs to be a motion under the article in the first place.
Excuse me, but Attorney Radigan, maybe we should have him speak, because he said that the body cannot do this. He said it has to be the Select Board.
John, would you like to speak on this? This is John Radigan, our town council.
Sure. The question that was posed was simply, for those of you who have read the town charter, it states that the selectmen have the authority to decide what warrant articles that are not required as a matter of law to be on the official ballot can either be on the official ballot or can be at the third session, open session. And so this would fall into that, as with certain other articles.
All right, so could you maybe advise us as to whether there is action that the body could take tonight to vote on whether that request should be made?
The meeting has no authority to direct the board under the terms of the charter of what to do. So people in the audience, as the speaker said, could obviously, ask the selectmen to do it, but there can't be a meeting vote to require the selectmen to do it.
All right. Well, would the request then be to pass over this article and to request the selectmen to consider moving into the open meeting?
I don't know about Passover. I mean, as the meeting takes up any article this evening, you have to decide whether they want to
Tyler, do you want to say something here?
yeah, I guess there's a discussion about it, but at the end of the day, if the selectmen decide they want to move it, they can, and if they decide that they're not interested in doing that, they don't have to.
Tyler?
I would like to add, I was reminded that we had discussed this in a public hearing for the budget and the warrant, and voted to put it on the ballot so that more people would have a chance to vote on this than usually shows up at town meeting, with the assumption that the deliberative session here would be the opportunity for the petitioners to really sell this article and then do their work with the public before the ballot to make them understand that this is worth doing. So therefore, I would make a motion to not change it from the ballot. Do I have a second?
Well, are you making a motion under this article?
I take that back. Sorry. My apologies. We're going to leave our statement as we left it at our public hearing. How about that?
Well, the posture of it, of the article without a motion, is that it will not be put on the official ballot and may or may not be raised at the time of the open meeting.
Point of information then. We can't add things onto the ballot at the open meeting, can we?
We can't add a new article to the meeting. No, those need to be posted in advance of the meeting. Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm Bob Herring-Smith. I'm not a lawyer, so take everything I say with a large grain of salt. But it seems like the first question is, do we want to move this to any ballot? And having moved it, the select board could then shift it to the open meeting? That's the question.
Well, I think you've heard the select board's position about whether or not to take it up at the open meeting. If there's no motion made, though, to place it on the official ballot, it will not likely be taken up in either place, either on the official ballot or at the open meeting.
All right, so I move to place Article 12 on the official ballot.
All right, motion as the article was read. Okay, is there a second to the motion? Yes, sir? Yes, please.
I'm James Kelly and resident of...
Are you seconding the motion?
I'm seconding the motion.
Okay, and would you like to speak on the motion, or is that going to be
So I think all three of us want to speak on it. You want to start?
Okay, well, go ahead in order then.
So I'm sorry that this is necessary. We weren't told that our petition article was going to be presented to the budget and the select board, so we were not there to present it at the time that it was voted on. And someone stood up and talked against it, so they voted against it. So I'm sorry that we weren't there and that we have to take up your time at this meeting. So the problem with, we're all from the Economic Development Authority, by the way, volunteers who are working hard to try to make this town, be a good place to do business. To be a good place to do business and to live in, sorry. So we've been told by the state that the problem with Peterborough is that it has very inconsistent effort. When things go south, then they're at the door yelling, and the rest of the time we disappear. So basically, I became involved right after the recession, and at that point in time, we had 40% vacancy rate in our commercial buildings. We'd lost a third of our jobs, and of course, everyone was very upset. At that point in time, we came to the meeting, we said help, our schools were losing students, we had almost no kindergarten, we had some of the oldest population in the state. We came to the town meeting and we asked them for $40,000 to work on this problem. The people in the town meeting saw that this was so important, they gave us, believe it or not, I think it's the only time in town history, that they raised the budget by $30,000, and they actually gave us $70,000, which we have been working diligently with. We came up with a 3-year plan, and our goals were to fill the space, to keep businesses, because what was happening at that point in time is that businesses were fleeing to Massachusetts. A lot of our local businesses were going to Milford. And the other towns were very aggressively pursuing businesses to come there because businesses were closing, as you recall. We needed to attract families to our schools, we needed to increase tourism, and of course we had that age-old problem of affordable housing. Well, we put together a website, we had a brochure that was in holders all around town, you may remember them. It was to attract families. It highlighted some of the younger folks in town so that we would try to bring those people to town. We actually made a list of all the businesses. Believe it or not, there was not a list of all the businesses in town. And we tried to reach out to them and to go talk with them and to find out what their problems were and to build a relationship so that they would have a reason to stay in town and we would know if they were planning on leaving town. And it worked. We managed to, we managed to put our website together and all this. Our schools, kindergartens have grown. We've started to have some younger families move into town, as those of you who are realtors know. And our commercial space is almost all full. So, and you can see the impact of our social media on this little sheet of paper that I handed out to a lot of people. You can see the before and after of our little bit of spending on social media. It made a huge difference in the impact we are able to have. Our social media is what we're trying to continue, because what happened after we had such great success is everybody's going, oh, the project's done, I don't need to be on the EDA anymore, right? But at this point in time, we're struggling to get enough members, so if you want to volunteer, join the EDA, we can use you. But the problem is at this point in time is that there's a great workforce shortage. We're not able to attract the people that we need. And the people who are running our businesses, a lot of them are old and they want to retire. They're trying to sell their businesses, and we need to be able to attract new blood. So the social media campaign, the whole purpose of it is to reach out to New York, to Boston, to places distant, who have entrepreneurs. When my husband and I moved here, this was the town for entrepreneurs. We started 2 businesses here ourselves and, very successful. So we need to get that kind of new blood back into town. And at this point in time, the EDA is having trouble even getting enough people for a quorum to even make a vote for TIFs and our basic work that we have to do. So I know that the person that came and talked to you and said, oh, well, these people don't know what they're doing, they're not marketers and so forth. Well, I only used to sell $60,000 robot sight unseen, but I think the thing is that we were trying to give people a pickup truck, and we're not trying to have a semi here at this point in time. We're not asking for $70,000 this time. We're just asking for $31,000 for 2 years, because we don't want to have to bother you again next time. So that's our story. I'm sorry I didn't give this talk before you guys voted, but as I say, nobody told us we were supposed to be there, and so we didn't know to show up. So I wish we could just have this presentation at town meeting, because it takes a little bit of talking, and most people don't read the paper. Thanks. Oh, I think Megan wants to talk a little bit.
We just have to recognize. I have to ask for permission because I'm not a resident. I'm not a resident from the town of Peterborough. I own a business here.
Your name is?
Megan Swacco.
Okay.
So you just have to recognize me to speak.
I'll allow you to speak. Go ahead, please.
Okay, so I started a business in 2019, right before the pandemic. At the time, the chamber was non-existent, and I found it very difficult to reach out to customers in town because I wasn't from here. I moved up from Massachusetts. So I joined the EDA because I thought that it was the best target market to be able to start a business and build a business, and also attract some of my other entrepreneur friends to see what a lovely place this was to live. So I've been working as the marketing chair in coordination with our this company that we have contracted to help us with the social media, and I can account for at least 6 other very successful entrepreneurs that have moved to the area since 2018 due to our extensive marketing. So I think that it would be a shame to not take a little bit of extra money and invest in this to continue to build what I hope to be a very long-standing business here. And that's all I have to say about that. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, is there anyone else who would like to speak? Mr. Kelly, go ahead.
I just certainly agree with everything we've heard so far. They're both been members of the Economic Development Authority and involved in the marketing process and really deeply knowledgeable about what we've accomplished with this last 5 years of money that came from one of these events 5 years ago. We think we want to continue that activity for another 2 years. Thank you. Should I get shorter? Well, I'll just...
That's better. Thank you.
So again, we've had great success for the last 5 years, but we still face real challenges. It's not a time to stop our effort to actually make our needs known to our public and to our possible newcomers. For example, we've started a much more established and active workforce housing, affordable housing committee of the Economic Development Authority, expanded it during the last several months with new members, and we're going to continue our effort to actually improve our housing and our employment of people, availability of people in our community. That's a whole continuing marketing process that we have to have. It's not time to shut down this effort we've been working on with fantastic social media for the last 5 years, with support coming from this activity 5 years ago. So now the really difficult thing is, how do we get the whole town to know when we got no's and no's on the ballot? So we'd like all of your help to actually get the yeses on the ballot when we do the vote. And I'm the chairman of the EDA, that's why I'm talking about this now. Thank you.
All right. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Sarah Steinberg-Heller. I'm on the Planning Board and the Master Plan Steering Committee. I'm a little bit confused about this because it seems like a good idea to me. I'm kind of curious about, I don't know, Mr. Moderator, if we're allowed to ask, but can we ask the Select Board or the Budget Committee to speak to why there's 2 votes no and is it 4 votes no? I'm just kind of curious. I want some context from why they're voting no, so I can more thoroughly understand, because I do understand the EDA's proposal. I just kind of am a little bit I'm just not sure how to wrap my head around the other things. Thank you.
All right, well, the select board and the budget committee are welcome to respond to that if they'd like. Yes, Tyler?
I can speak for myself. At the meeting where this was presented, we were giving no information about it. It came to us at that meeting. That was the first time I had seen it, so I was a little reluctant at that step to vote on something that I hadn't heard, that background we just heard. Secondly, what was my second thought? Oh, secondly, the way our town administration and department heads have worked their budgets this year with very fine detail. We have been conscious of every dollar, and this coming at the last minute didn't seem like we could throw an extra $31,000 on a budget that's only $20,000 lower. So, and thirdly, the Keene Peterborough Joint Chamber of Commerce, if I recall correctly, had an influx of money in September maybe of $300,000-ish. I was looking back at notes in our select board meeting minutes recently. And so hopefully, I think they just opened an office in Peterborough. So it's my hope that they're going to be working hand in hand with our EDA and our local businesses and using monies that Keene is also contributing for our region. And I think that's where I stood on my vote. Thank you.
Okay, yes, sir. Sorry. For the budget committee?
Yes, speaking on behalf of the budget committee, I would point out that we had some abstentions on this vote, which is quite unusual, but it
Would
represents...
you just state your name,
I'm
sir?
sorry, I'm Carl Mazzino from the budget committee.
Go ahead.
We had some abstentions on this vote, which is quite unusual. I don't think you'll see any others in this entire program tonight. And it was because I think the information was very scanty at the time. We were told by people in the meeting that there were a number of ambitions coming out of this initiative that had not been fulfilled, but that the social media effort had been successful. So again, I think our position is about the way Chair Tyler described it, is we had very little information. As our first speaker mentioned, there was a reason for that, but in any event, we weren't able to endorse or recommend the adoption of the motion.
All right, Bill, did you want to?
Yeah, I wanted to go on the record. I was the one select board member to endorse this article. I think it's penny wise, pound foolish not to spend the money. I think it brings more business into town, and I agree. The Keene Peterborough Chamber of Commerce is being regenerated, but we don't expect to see any real effect from them, particularly for the town of Peterborough, for another 2 years, because they're spending most of their time and energy on branding. They're not actively seeking bringing people into the community and to the region.
All right. Anyone else from the budget committee? Yes, sir.
Yeah, Rick Lesser. My major concern when it was originally presented kind of echoes Tyler's, and also I was concerned about the fact that we were authorizing $31,000 for 2 years, and I thought, and maybe we can even amend this tonight to specifically say how much we would want to spend for the year, not for a 2-year period.
All right, sir, go ahead.
Yep, River Marmerstein, I'm a resident of Peterborough. So I'm just a little confused still. It seems like there's been a lot of talk on just being social media, but nothing actually specific as to what we're going to be doing with $31,000, which is a quite sizable sum. And even on this handout, going from 418 impressions to 3,198 isn't a very huge impact. I mean, I've done that on a Facebook page, tripled that amount of growth with no money spent. And I appreciate, as a tax-paying resident of Peterborough, all the work that's been done to keep the budget level. and I appreciate the work that the Economic Development Authority is doing to keep housing prices affordable, but spending money on something that we really don't have a clear idea on where the money is actually going and what it's going to be used for, especially given the votes to recommend and not recommend, just seems to be completely counterproductive to keeping housing affordable.
Okay, before you speak again, if you would, Gene, anyone else who hasn't spoken yet who would like to speak before we take further comment? Okay. Well, yes, sir. Pardon me?
No, the first speaker still first. Go for a second.
Hi, I'm Dewey Clark. I agree that it's penny wise and pound foolish. While I would like to know what we're buying for 30, what the contractual services are, what the goal of them are, what the purpose of them are, what the deliverables are. I think to me, a town that is not growing is a town that is dying. Okay? And we need to do what we can do on a continual basis to market the town. So, I am in support of that. I just want to know what it's going to, like the previous speaker. Thank you.
Okay, any other first-time speakers? Yes, more, please.
Carol Nelson. I was at that meeting that night, and it was talked about in depth that if this does not pass, there's a very good chance that that type of marketing could be done by the town.
Could be,
And
I'm sorry?
could be done by the town. So maybe Nicole could speak to that.
Okay, again, any first-timers who haven't spoken yet? Yes, sir. Would you step up, please? Go ahead, sir.
Hi, my name is Brian Carden, one-year resident of Peterborough. So I think this is a great idea. I do think it got off to a bumpy start. It's going to be probably tough to get this to pass, but I certainly would encourage the town to get out there and vote for this. I would not suggest that we amend it for anything like 2 years, because my understanding is one town meeting cannot affect the next town meeting, and that to me would include budget. So make it the money they're asking for and leave it at that.
Would you state your last name for us, please? Carpenter?
Carton and Milk. Thank you.
All right. Sir, are you coming up? Yes, go ahead, please.
I make a motion that we fund it for 1 year for $10,000 and see what happens with that.
Well, you need to, if you're going to offer an amendment, you need to do that in writing.
Okay.
And
you know, the one thing is with businesses, our town kind of is a pass-through town because nothing's open when we get out of work.
And your name, sir?
My name's Kerry Rourke. And I'm a new resident for 2 years. And it is tough to, you know, nothing's really open for the people who actually live here.
So do you want to make an amendment?
Yes.
All right, you need to write that down if you would then. We'll come back to you as soon as you do that. Yes, go ahead.
I'm Jim Van Valkenburg. And I just wanted, it seems fundamental to this was the presentation wasn't made. And I want to know why that didn't happen. It seems like there was a miscommunication or something like that. Why didn't these people get up in front of the select board and make that presentation? It seems like that's why we're here talking about this right now.
All right. So any other first-time speakers before we go back to Jean Deach?
Background and experience. We also have town staff that are quite capable and competent with social media. And we do manage our own website as well, so we believe that if this were to fail, the EDA's work up to this point would not be abandoned. We would be able to carry it forward. I also just want to point out that certainly the EDA did have the opportunity to join the Select Board and Budget Committee when the EDA's budget was being presented. And I believe that that was discussed at an EDA meeting as well, at some length, if I recall correctly from the minutes.
Yeah, and I was told by Danica that I didn't
just
have
one moment.
that.
Just one moment. Anyone else? Just want to make sure we get all the first-timers first. Okay, go ahead then, please.
So during the time that I've been on the EDA since 2014, or working with the EDA, I'll say, since 2014, we've had 4 different people in Danica's position. And so it makes it very difficult. Yeah, you may have a social media person at one point. But the other thing is that you don't really have, it's not part of their job description. So it gets pushed to the bottom, and the position of community development depends very much on how much construction's going on at a particular amount of time. If there's a lot of construction going on, that person is busy as can be. If there's not, then they have time to do other projects. So for someone to have a consistent effort, it seems very unlikely. And that graph that I gave you, that little low one, that's what happened with the town with no advertising money. The second graph includes advertising money, and I'm told the town would not spend anything on advertising because that's part of this budget. As for the people who wonder what's going on, the reason I didn't spend a lot of time on that is it's been going on. We've been doing it. It's not something new. But you can find our Facebook page and our Instagram and our Twitter and so forth. They're online. As far as putting it for, I don't have any problem with putting it for 1 year. Putting it for $10,000 would basically cut out most of the advertising budget, which is what you need to do it. So if we're going to put it for 1 year, then I would ask that we put it for 15.5 and make it half instead of 10. But we have to do these amendments sequentially, so we can't do that. No. I wanted to make one other comment, and that was about people are getting a little confused about what's going on with Keene. There are two efforts. One is the Keene Peterborough Chamber of Commerce, and the other is a regional group that got this big grant of the $350,000 that's run by Jamie Trowbridge and some people from Yankee and region. A Chamber of Commerce is a membership organization. It only serves its members. So only businesses who sign up to the Chamber and are members will have any services from that chamber. As for the regional development group, as someone said, that $350,000 is a study committee. They're going to be sitting around thinking about branding for the Monadnock region. There's no implementation of anything from that $350,000. So that's not going to help us, at least not until we get to some kind of implementation phase, which may happen sometimes in the future. I have to tell you, we have been working on branding for the region as long as I can remember. And there's been group after group after group doing this. So I don't think that either of those efforts are relevant, and I think the town effort would be spotty and inadequate. I guess as an example of that, we have a box of brochures sitting in Danica's office, and I actually purchased little holders for them and put them around town, and for 3 years while I was working with that closely, I went around and put them up myself, and now you got Laura from the office was helping. But now there's nothing out. And it's not, it's just, she's got a gazillion other things to do. It's not part of her normal workday job. And nobody's assigned to do it, and it doesn't get done. And that's why we're asking for the money to make it happen. So,
Okay, well, we have a motion that's been offered by Carrie Rourke. And the motion is that the town vote to raise and appropriate $10,000 for the purpose of a contractual service to support the Economic Development Authority in their efforts to promote business retention and new business development. So that's the motion. Is there a second? Are you seconding the motion? Well, we need to have a second here before we act on this motion. Is there a second on the motion? All right. Would you just identify yourself, please? Okay. So, sir, would you like to speak on your motion, or are you prepared to leave it at the... Okay. Does anyone like to speak on the motion? Well, okay. In order for the motion to be adopted, we need to take a vote. So if you are in favor of the motion that's been offered to amend the underlying motion, please raise your paddles. Okay, if you are opposed to the amendment, please raise your paddles. It looks clearly in the negative here, so I'll rule that the motion has failed. We're back to the original motion. Any further comment on the original motion? Sir, did you want to speak again? Step up, please.
Dewey Clark, I just still trying to get an answer of what are the contractual services that are being proposed.
Okay, well...
I get the consistency of effort and all of that, you know, that if somebody's not paid to do it directly, it ain't going to get done. But what is the $31,000 by?
All right, go ahead.
So this is a contract with Drum. You may know Eddie Gomez and Rory.
I'm sorry?
Eddie Gomez and Rory have a company called Drum, and the money goes to them, and I think it's about 1/3 for advertising and 2/3 for them to make movies and post them on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And Google, it's for Google Ads too, yeah. So they do that, and then they do Google Ads and Facebook ads. So for those of you who are techies, they're posting on 3 sites, and they're doing that. Every other Megan knows this better than I do.
They do 8 posts a month, and that does include a lot of research. They do something called Faces of Peterborough, which focuses on a small business owner. And for myself, I got over like 10,500 views just on this video that they made and was shared wide. So they make videos with high quality equipment as well as editing, and then they also do a lot of tagging, which when you're in social media, you hashtag Peterborough, hashtag a place to live. You know, they just do a lot of targeting marketing, generally to focus on our region, but also to do outreach to Boston, New York, and other marketplaces that would be interested in moving here. I hope that answers the question.
Can I say something? I wanted to remind people that part of their contract is also maintenance and update of the Peterborough Works website, which is the EDA-related one. It's not part of this particular? Okay.
Okay, go ahead, ma'am.
Hi, Sarah Steinberg-Keller again. So, Linda, can I make an amendment where we do $15,500 for 1 year? And then maybe more?
All right, so write that out if you would, please. It sounds like the amendment is that's going to be proposed here is to cut the amount involved in half, and to is the rest of the motion to the same as it was before? Okay, so it's 15,500. Okay. So that's the motion that is going to be offered here. We'll have her write that out for us. And is there a second to that motion? All right. Second by you, sir? Brian Field. So as we said, the motion to amend is to reduce the amount in the original motion from $31,000 to $15,500, so half of the original appropriation. Ma'am, would you like to speak about this, or is that...
Sarah Steinberg-Keller. I think the work that Drum has done has been really interesting. I know I've learned a lot about people who live in the town. I just think that maybe if we can have it be a more limited year-long thing, then maybe the EDA can take the time to sort of more thoroughly define their work for the town. So next town meeting, we can have a more, like, from what you guys were saying and what you guys were saying, just a more clear mission.
Just
and
tell us what the date is when we're supposed to show up.
Okay, understood. But anyway, so we can have a clearer picture and maybe an ongoing discussion, sort of like ongoing public engagement like we've been doing for the master plans, different chapters, something like that. But anyway, I just think this solves a problem and also is much clearer. And I don't know if people aren't familiar with the work Drum's been doing, but it's really interesting and it's highlighted a lot of cool, diverse things that are going on in the town. And I'd love to see that keep going. But I also feel a lot of hesitancy sort of just plowing into a 2-year commitment. Let's start with a year and let's see where we can go.
All right. Are there any other speakers who would like to talk about this amendment before we take a vote? Go ahead, ma'am. What's your name?
Michelle Rourke. I have a question, actually. Do the selectmen re-vote on this with it being an amendment?
Pardon me?
Do the selectmen re-vote on this with it being an amendment? And will it go, if they do, will it go on the ballot? Because I think that's a turnoff, that people are going to see it on the ballot that the selectmen have said no, but with it being less money, maybe they might say yes, and people might vote for it.
Well,
so will they re-vote?
The way I understand it, they could re-vote, but they would not be required to do that.
Okay. Thank you.
Can she request that they do?
I'm sorry.
Can I request that they re-vote?
You certainly can make that request.
I would
Sure.
like to make that request.
Is there someone over here who wanted to speak? Tyler?
Yeah, I think we'd make that vote after the motion.
Absolutely.
After we all
I was
vote.
just curious if it was something that would or could happen.
I guess so.
Thank you.
Okay, go ahead then, please, ma'am.
Sure. Carol Nelson again. I just want to be sure that everyone realizes if it's over $10,000, correct me if I'm wrong, Nicole, it has to go out to bid. So it's not necessarily a contract that's going to Drum. Thank you.
Okay, well, are we ready to vote on the proposed amendment? If you're in favor of the proposed amendment, which is to reduce the amount involved with this article from $31,000 to $15,500. If you're in favor of that, raise your paddles. All right. If you are opposed to that, raise your paddles. That amendment appears distinctly in the affirmative, so I'll declare that that amendment has passed. And unless there is a further amendment to be offered here, we will move the amended motion to the ballot at this point to be voted on May 10th. All right. Tyler?
I suppose at this point, I'd like to ask the select board to show hands in favor of the amended motion. Warrant. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Nay. That'll go on the ballot, I suppose.
All right. I think we have concluded. Oh, yes, sir.
Will the vote of that's represented previously from the Budget Committee be on the amended one as well? Or will it be empty? As originally listed, there was a vote represented from the Budget Committee, but now that we have an amendment, it seems not clear to me whether that will still be shown on the ballot.
Attorney Radigan says that we should schedule a budget committee meeting for a revote.
You'll be entitled to take a new vote on the amendment, the amended motion if you would like, and that will be reflected on the ballot.
Can we do it right now?
You have 6 members. I believe you have 8 members on the board.
We have a quorum.
So it's a quorum.
5 is a quorum.
It's not something that needs to be done at this meeting. If you want to do that by staying after the meeting, you're welcome to discuss it and vote on it at that point. If everyone is ready to vote on it at this point, they're welcome to do that.
I think we're ready to vote right now.
All right, well, of the 6 members of the Budget Committee who are here, those in favor of the amended motion, please raise your paddles. It looks like 4 opposed to the amended motion, 2.
I think that's the same as on the previous one.
Yeah, I'll since we were asked before, I'll explain my vote. I was against it in the first place, and I still am. The argument that the petitioners weren't made aware of the meeting doesn't work for me, because they made the petition. Like, the petitioners need to know the meeting schedule if you're going to put it forth a petition, first of all. And I think that they probably did know what was going on that night. I don't know if it's, I take things too personally sometimes. Well, I guess, yeah, I do when it's on this level. We're talking, part of the argument was that the town staff can't handle 8 posts on Instagram or Facebook a month. It's like, we have some of the most qualified and dedicated staff out of any organization I've ever worked for before. So I guess I take a little offense to that. They can definitely handle 8 posts a month or 8 pictures or interviewing a couple people here and there. I don't see why that's a problem. And I understand the stats, and I've heard them several times before in EDA meetings when this has been brought up. And, you know, it was mentioned that 6 businesses have come here specifically for, I mean, like, we really say that 6 businesses will come in here and say that they moved to Peterborough because of something they saw on Instagram and weren't considering it anyways? Okay. And there's businesses that haven't left, I guess. I'm not convinced. If we were trying to sell that, then I'd like to see those facts, but I think the town staff is perfectly qualified.
All right. Is there anyone who has not spoken who would like to speak on the amended motion? All right. Well, Roland?
I'd like to move the question.
Well, I think we were about to get right to that, Roland. So let's, unless there's a further comment that anyone needs to make who hasn't spoken already, we'll move that article as amended to the official ballot on May 10th. And certainly, we're not voting on it tonight. Everyone will have an opportunity to consider it and decide whether to vote for it on May the 10th. That does conclude our business tonight. Please return your paddles so that we can use them again on May 11th. And if you have friends or family members or neighbors who could come to that meeting and could vote on May the 10th or appear on May 11th, please encourage them to do so. Thank you very much for your attention tonight, and we'll see you on May the 10th.